Hello one and all, I'm Pally Games, and yes, I just want to say before I start this video, thanks for the warm reception to all the cards and castles content I've been bringing out. You guys seem to like that, so I'll continue to do it. Unfortunately this isn't going to be a nice video. It's not going to be a fun one to do either. It's doing something I didn't even think I was going to do, which is talk over the changes made for the newest patch to do with the Warlock Academy. I have a lot of problems with it, and hopefully I'm going to address them and say why in my opinion they are bad, basically. You're more than welcome to, disagree with me, and that's fine, that's how opinions work, and you're more than welcome to voice them in the comments below, and yeah, can have a discussion about it. Sounds good to me. Let's start by talking about the most egregious thing I think from this patch has happened, which is the crafting system. Now it's been updated, and many would believe it was a good thing. It's been improved to help more, and while they have said, it does mean that crafting one of these is basically near on impossible. That's no excuse in my opinion. So let's talk about what it is now. So let's start with commons. Commons are now valued at 4 to 40. Now let's try and find one just to put that to the test. There we go. 4 to 40. Now that is a problem because it's now become even worse than what it was, I believe. Basically I'm going to do a direct comparison to Hearthstone. Why? Because they basically use the same business model, except this game seems to be getting worse as it goes along. Now as far as the crafting system goes, the commons are 5 to 40 in Hearthstone, where in here it's 4 to 40, which means that you're going to have to put in an extra 2 commons to be able to get a single common in terms of disenchant to craft. So already things are falling apart, and we ain't even got further than that. So we'll go further on. Go to rare. Now this has gone up to 20 to 140, which puts it as a ratio of 5 to 1. Whereas with Hearthstone, it's 20 to 100, which is 4 to 1. You can is that right? No, it's not. I've made a bit of a mistake there. Hearthstone is 20 to 100, which is 5 to 1. Whereas with cards and castles, it's 20 to 140, which is 7 to 1. Once again, you're seeing that pattern emerge. Now, this isn't even the biggest problem. This is the thing what's so clever about Hearthstone with the crafting system, which many people breeze over and don't realise is the best thing about it, in that you're always guaranteed to be able to craft into something. Because if you get a pack, you're obviously 4 commons and a rare. That's going to give you 40 dust to craft into. At least you can say, well, I've got nothing from a pack, but at least I can now craft a common. And it goes up in scale. So when you go to epic, you get yourself 100 back, which means you can use that 100 to get a rare. Then when you go up to legendary, you got 400, which allows you to at least get an epic. Now the problem with cards and castles is this system doesn't work, because if you get your average pack, it equals out 36. You can't get anything for 36, and then it goes onwards. So you then got a system where you say, okay, then what about if I got myself an epic? Well, if you get yourself an epic, that's 400. So I get what you're saying there. At least you can start to gain some of this back. So essentially what you're saying in the late game of this crafting system you're saying that everything's worth more, so I can get a load of worthless cards, really, because if I get myself a legendary, what I've already got for 2,000, I can say, well, I can either get one epic, which is the exact same as Hearthstone, or I can get a dozen of commons or rares, is basically what you're saying. But it's only going to be a certain amount you can do that before you've got every common and rare. And that's the problem. They're called commons because they're common, so you're going to get them a lot of impacts anyway. So it favours a newer play base, I admit. You know, it would work well if you're saying, as a newer player, if I get a legendary I've already got, that's going to help me get cards I haven't got. But in my mind, who wants to craft commons when you're going to mainly want to be saving your dust for the rarer stuff, because you know you're not going to be able to get that? No? Maybe I'm just off my rocker with that first analysis, but you know, that's just what I thought. Now, we'll leave that there, because I suppose that is something you could argue back and forth, and you could give the pluses, which I've said, you know, you get your commons and rares faster, but say you basically can never really get a legendary from this system, because it would just, you've got no chance really. Like, if we do the maths here and say, right, if you was, it would take you a total of 20 epics to get one legendary. Takes 4 in Hearthstone. If you wanted to do it even worse and go the common route, 36 is how many you get per pack. Now, that means in 10 packs you get 360. In 100 you get 3,600, and you've still got nowhere near. You'd need 2,000... over 2,000 packs just to get one legendary. It's a bit shocking, that. However, I won't dog on that point too much, because equally, and this is somewhat statistically what they haven't given out, so I have no idea, you know, what the ratio is of how many packs to epics or to legendaries is the case. Because at least you tend to get these vague outlines of, you know, a ratio. That didn't seem to be the case. You know, I could at least then I could stick up for one side of Cards and Castles more than Hearthstone. Or, you know, it might end up with Hearthstone's even fairer in that regard, I don't know. But we'll move swiftly along to the next point, which is they're editing how they do legendaries. They've basically said, oh, we think the fairest thing to do is make, not the fairest necessarily, but the clearest thing to do is to say, right, every card what has a name of something in it, we're going to make a legendary. Which I'm not quite sure that's always going to be applicable, but you know, I've gone along with it because I thought that just means a couple name changes, that's fine. The problem comes in that they want to make more legendaries from this system. They're actively making stuff like this common a legendary, which you can go and say, well, it's good, it's great, you know, as a current player, I'm going to get loads out of this, loads of dust. But that's kind of using not a very forward-thinking mind. You're kind of looking at it's basically you're looking at the short-term gain and not the long-term benefit. In that, by doing this, it means that future players are going to have a harder time because even more cards are becoming legendary. I didn't see on that list any card becoming unlegendary. They've even manipulated cards' names to fit this system. Cards that weren't even legendary, they've changed the name so that they can become legendary. that's preposterous in my mind. It serves no purpose except making more legendaries to increase how many packs people buy, because they've now made the crafting system also wonky. I'm not even finished yet. That's a funny thing. I tell you what, I'll go over a few. I'm going to talk about balance in a minute. I was going to say I'll do it now, but no. Tournament. Let's talk about tournament. So they've changed things. They've changed the currency around. I've crunched the numbers, and it's still no fairer. It's about the same. They've only just multiplied it, which, in my opinion, that just means it's still too expensive. You know, unless they've even if they've improved the reward, it's a foolish endeavour to say that this is a good price model. But you know, I suppose they're adamant that this is a good model, so I'm going to just leave them to it, I suppose. In fact, how much is 30 CP? SP even. Let's just have a gander. Let's have a look. So 50 is £5. So that means 30. Let's say that's £3. That means it's even more expensive to do a tournament than it is to do a drafting Hearthstone. It's twice as expensive. So I'm very right in my assumption that you can't even go off the idea that, oh well, if you use SP you're going to get a better advantage. You're not. This game's just way overpriced at the minute. It really needs to get things in check. However, at least it's fun. I was liking a lot of what the game offers, except they're editing that now, so there's stuff in it which I really enjoyed, which now is not fun at all. So let's talk over some of that. Why not? So, something I really liked was how they dealt with range units. Range units in the game, when I get to some, had the idea that you can hit from long range, but if someone comes to you, you can't hit back, which to me was a great balancing idea, and it made for some really interesting combat, because it made for placement to be really important. And basically they're throwing out the window and saying, well, they can retaliate now, and we'll have a certain selection of range units which have the key term cannot retaliate. Now, if I was to be a bit snarky and cynical and say why would they do this, it would be because they can create more cards by doing this. They can have the same stats at a different level and say, well, it's got the cannot retaliate key term, which makes it slightly different. And that would be the only reason I can see for them to do that, because it just makes range units even stronger. Whereas before I liked the fact that it really synergised well with how the movement system was, because it made the game more interesting to say, well, you know, if I place this range unit 1 square more, it would mean that if he has a charge unit, he could hit that. So I better like manoeuvre around the idea that he might do that. But now it's like, oh, I can just place it wherever I want because I still get my range hit. I still get a retaliation hit on him. So it makes it a bit stupid in my opinion. But that is my opinion. It's, you know, a personal bias. You may not agree. You may think, oh, this is ace now. Get so much, you know, I'm a real fan of range units and now they're even better. But by doing that, you're disregarding, you know, core gameplay of Cards and Castles. So you should keep that in mind. Outside of that, what they've done, they've changed a few card costs, movability of some characters, you know, basic stat changes. I'm not going to get bogged down over all that stuff because, to be honest, I'm not that bothered about that. You know, I'm happy for them to change stats around based on user feedback and stuff. That's fine to me. But the stuff I've mentioned, I feel I have justification in saying. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it, and I'd just say, oh, it's just my opinion, it's fine. But these things, I truly think that, you know, I'm in the right in saying these. Oh, and bit upset to hear they're changing around the stats of some of these cards. Like Earth Knight, one of my favourites, you're going from a 6/11 to an 8/8. I was just like, oh, how dull. But they are making some good balance changing. Kind of. They're changing how the Ranger is, they're making him a legendary, but except without a charge, which, yeah, I can kind of see the reasoning. But, you know, it might have been better to take away evasive, but never mind. Like I say, I'm not going to get too bogged down in stuff like that. I hope you have gained something from this, guys. I hope you either agree with me, or if, like I said, you disagree, please let me know, and put in the comments your thoughts, Great to hear, if you've got some sort of justification I've not thought of, or, this is overall excellent, that's fine with me, but I will not drag this on longer, and I might do a scenario, might do one of them, why not? So we'll catch you on the flip side. Wowzers, I can't believe I've said that. Goodbye.